Now it's time for perspective on the programme. And being a Parisian, one thing you have to love is food, because the city, of course, is full of bistro cafes and also a series of rather special restaurants that perhaps really stand out. But how to track them down? Well, the one source of material is my guest today, Chris Newens. He's author of this new book. It's called Moveable Feasts, Paris in 20 Meals, and he joins us here on set. Thanks very much for coming in and talking to us about it. I mean, so much is written about Paris, so much is written about Paris's food. What's different about your book, would you say?
Well, thank you very much for having me here. I think what's different about my book, or what I tried to do with this book, is it's partly a guidebook to Paris, but really it's trying to build a portrait of the city through, well, all of its different types of food. So while I do talk about the bistros, absolutely, and kind of traditional French food, I'm also, well, looking in kind of like broader arrondissement and things like that, and looking at, say, the Vietnamese food and the kind of the kebabs, for example. So really it's a book about how ordinary Parisians eat from wherever they come from in the city.
Yeah, I mean, it's very obvious, isn't it, when you walk around Paris, there are those different quartiers, those different parts of it where particularly a certain community lives, and you can sort of identify each area, arrondissement, as you say, by the food, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, so just off the top of my head, for example, I mean, people think about, well, the 18th arrondissement, and they think about Montmartre, but they don't necessarily realise, if they're just visiting Paris, that there is also, well, a massive North African and Sub-Saharan African community who lives there. And so in the book, I actually delve deeper into the Sub-Saharan African community, specifically the Congolese food of the 18th arrondissement. And I went to a place where they served this incredible catfish, which I think, like, ordinarily when you visit Paris, maybe, or even a lot of Parisians wouldn't know about a restaurant like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So how on earth did you find out where to go, I suppose? Or I mean, obviously you haven't eaten a meal in every single restaurant in Paris, or have you?
Not quite. I mean, more's the shame. But like, I mean, I think, well, I tried to mix it up ever so slightly with every single chapter. So just to be clear, yeah, every chapter is based on a different arrondissement of Paris. And some of them, well, I live in the 19th, so around there, I certainly kind of knew a little bit better where to go. But then, you know, when it got kind of further away to places which I didn't know so well, say the 13th arrondissement, which I actually had, before I started researching this book, only very scant knowledge of, I kind of employed the uses of a local food guide to sort of show me around, and that was taking me around like Olympiade, like the whole sort of Chinatown area of Paris, which really is a Southeast Asian town. And this woman who was my guide showed me, I think, the most incredible banh mi that I have ever had in my life, just by taking me around. So that worked out pretty well.
So do you I mean, is it the kind of book, do you think, is it good for a tourist perhaps to read before they come to Paris to get some hints or ideas?
I think I mean, that's definitely what I was aiming for, is that it's good for both a tourist to read, to, well, first of all, to see a real idea of what Paris is like, that it's not just the central arrondissement, that it goes beyond them. I mean, I hope that I include restaurants in those central arrondissements as well, where maybe the tourists tend to go to. And yeah, I think that they would definitely kind of benefit from understanding other places to go, perhaps. But it's also good for, well, just anybody who is generally interested in Paris. And I would hope even people who live here might discover other sides of the city that they didn't necessarily know, as I did when I was researching it.
I'm going to ask you a difficult question now. Why should we believe you? I mean, what are your credentials here in deciding what is a good restaurant? Is it just your opinion?
I'm always very hungry. Well, honestly, so my background is in food, in the sense that I come from a family who used to run a bakery and a tea rooms in London, which was actually in that family for 160 years. Wow. And so, I mean, food was very much just the sort of the language that I spoke between generations, I suppose, just growing up. And of course, I worked there from, I think, about kind of like age 14, washing dishes, and then gradually kind of making cakes and bussing tables and things like that. So really, I feel that kind of just restaurant culture is in my blood. And then on top of that, I have lived in Paris now for more than 10 years. So I kind of felt that in writing this book, I was trying to push the two things together, the knowledge that I already...
Combination.
Well, I mean, hopefully.
Yeah. You come, don't you? You live in the historic quartier Villette. It used to be a slaughterhouse, didn't it?
It did, yes. Yeah.
I mean, what did you find around there?
Well, yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, it used to be the slaughterhouse of Paris. Like, that's where... So I think this is up until the 1960s. I might be wrong on the decade there. But it was literally where every single sort of animal or piece of meat that people would have ended up on people's tables in Paris came into as a live animal and slaughtered and was butchered and then shipped off to the rest of the city. Now, these days, of course, as you know, it's a big municipal park. But the big municipal park actually exists exactly where this enormous slaughter yard would have been. And what you can see is that around the edges of the Parc de la Villette, as it's called, there are remnant butchers' shops, which are some of the biggest butchers' shops still anywhere in the city. And I mean, they told me that they sell some of the best meat for some of the lowest prices. I mean, that's probably
subjective,
decide,
but I'm sure they're probably right. What's your overall favourite then? Would you say? Do you have an overall favourite?
My overall favourite. Well, I mean, I hope this isn't too much of a dodge, but I think that the most interesting thing that I discovered, so instead of naming a restaurant, I'm going to talk about the markets of Paris. And I think that there are a few things which kind of exemplify the food culture of Paris better than the markets. And I really discovered, particularly in these sort of like central arrondissement markets, because as you know, every arrondissement has at least 2 markets, at least twice a week. And in the central areas, they will be run by people who are, I just couldn't believe their passion for, well, waking up at maybe 2, 3 in the morning every sort of day of the week, selecting their produce, selecting the very best produce from the huge wholesale market called Rungis, which is just outside the Périphérique, bringing it in, sort of setting it up in these beautiful ways on different stalls, and just doing that. And often these people will have been doing it for themselves generations. Like they will have been in the same family selling the same produce on the same stall for generations. And even more than that, they will have been being visited by the same families who live in those arrondissements for the same number of generations. So I was astonished by that. And that really was one of the most enlightening things and the best things about Paris food culture that I think I discovered.
Yeah, it's incredible to hear about that as well. Finally, I mean, books in English, you're obviously an Englishman yourself. I mean, any plans to try and translate it into French, or do you think perhaps that's wouldn't go down so well over here?
Hopefully, I don't know. I mean, listen, this may be controversial, but
French people taking advice from an Englishman on food, perhaps.
So this may be a controversial statement, but I do think that there is a tendency in Paris, and I was definitely one of these people, that people are quite sort of situated within the areas where they live, and particularly local Parisians where they were born. So hopefully, if it were translated into French, which I already have a potential title, which would be Paris en Festin, which is a sort of a pun on Moveable Feasts, and Paris en Fête, which is... Anyway, I don't need to explain the joke. But yes, hopefully I think that French people would also be interested, particularly Parisians, because it would explain other parts of the city to them.
Well, you've told us some interesting things about the city that I didn't know, and I'm sure our audience didn't know either. So thanks very much for coming in and talking to us about it. Chris Newens, there's the book, Moveable Feasts. You will find it, I'm sure, Paris in 20 Meals, just published. Thanks very much for coming in and talking to us here on France 24.